يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today in the Friday sermon, I would like to look at some of the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam with regard to consumption, how it is, alaykum salam, and the manner in which we should consume the resources, the blessings, the sustenance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Islam is not a religion that has told us to renounce the world in the sense of not eating well, dressing well, or living well. But rather, Islam has told us to renounce love of the world in the sense of living with only the goal of eating well, dressing well, and enjoying oneself. And there is a very important difference between the two. If I live for the pleasures of this world, then I am limiting myself to a material existence and I am depriving myself of knowledge of God and service and worship of God. But if I live well in this world without the world being my goal, then my wealth and my material resources become a tool that I can use to serve God better. And if I renounce the world and I don't live well and I don't think at all about my material needs, then I might worship God, but I will not have those tools that allow me to be influential and effective within society. I can go live in a cave and I can worship my own life, but I will not be able to have the positive influence on society and maybe even on my own family that I would have if I lived well, but I lived a life of worship, devotion, and moderation. And that is the teaching that we have from Ahlul Bayt. The Quran teaches us in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 87, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تحرموا طيبات ما أحل الله لكم ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين. O you who are faithful, do not prohibit the good things that Allah has made permissible for you, but do not go beyond the limits, because Allah does not love those who go beyond the limits. So the goal of our consumption is to strengthen our body, our soul, to be ready to worship Allah, and to utilize all of the blessings that Allah has given us in this world in order to more effectively honor the commandments of God, build relationships with our fellow believers, give assistance to our fellow human beings, and to ensure that we are serving a purpose higher than just our whim and our own ego. There is a balance that Islam has taught us to observe. On the one hand, we have a wasteful or extravagant existence, and on the other hand, we have a stingy existence. And Islam has told us to be in the middle. Let's look at a few of the teachings of Ahlul Bayt with regard to that balance between extravagance and stinginess. A few ahadith about stinginess. One is from our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. He says that al-bakhil alladhi ya'kul wa la yu'ti. One sign of a person who is bakhil or stingy is that they enjoy a good thing for themselves, but they don't enjoy sharing it with others. Now, there are some people who go even beyond that, and they can afford something that is useful and beneficial for their health, that will make life easier for them, but just out of stinginess, they don't even enjoy it themselves. And that's what we would call a miser. Somebody who enjoys things for themselves and doesn't share it with others, in our culture and society, we don't call that person a miser. We just call that person normal. I earned it, and I should be able to enjoy it. But look at how our religious teaching wants to shift our baseline of what is normal and acceptable. If I can afford a good meal, and so I will eat a good meal, but I don't care to share it with you. If I get myself good quality things, but when it comes time for a gift or a donation or charity, then I go and find the cheapest thing, then that might seem in an individualistic society to be acceptable. In fact, we might even feel good about our charity, at least I gave something. But what is the baseline that our Prophet gives us? He says, Al-bakhil alladhi ya'kul wa la yu'ti. If you can enjoy it, but then you are not willing to share it, or you eat well, but you only give the worst possible, or the cheapest possible, then you are stingy. So that is the standard that we should adopt as a role model for our own practice. It is reported from our 11th Imam, Imam al-Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, that he said, لِلْإِقْتِصَادِ مِقْدَارٍ. There is a limit to what is good planning. فَإِنْ زَادَ عَلَيْهِ فَهُوَ بُخْلٌ. But if you go beyond that limit of moderation and iqtisad, then that is stinginess. And so we should always be measuring ourselves and second guessing. It's not a fixed standard where I can say, if you save this percentage of your income, that's okay, and a greater percentage is stinginess. Because it can vary depending on what my income is, how regular my income is. Somebody with a regular salary, they may have to make a different plan and budget than somebody with an unpredictable income. But we should always be measuring ourselves and evaluating and second guessing and calibrating so that we are planning. If there is an unexpected emergency, it doesn't all of a sudden mean that everything is a crisis. But at the same time, we shouldn't be planning so much that no matter what I have saved and no matter how much income I have, I always feel like, well, what if 3 years from now something happens? What am I going to do? And then I never feel that I am able to do anything for somebody else. Our 11th Imam says there is iqtisad, which is to be moderate, to be judicious, to plan. But then if you go beyond that limit, then it is stinginess, and make sure that you are always evaluating how you are deciding and planning so that you don't go beyond that limit. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that charity is part of our budget. We find that in a hadith from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, "Kulu washrabu walbasu wa tasaddaqu fi ghayri saraf wala bukhl. Inna Allah yuhibbu an yara athara ni'matihi ala 'abdihi." That when you are given a blessing by Allah, Allah loves to see that blessing used in your life. That's why He gave it to you. So eat and drink and wear clothing and give sadaqah without stinginess and without excessiveness, so that you have a plan for your life, you have a budget, you budget for your own food, you budget for your own rent or mortgage or living expenses, and you also budget for sadaqah. And that is part of your plan. And then you adjust it based on your circumstances and based on your needs. If we are stingy, then it's not just our reputation that we are going to harm, but rather even our chance for salvation. According to a hadith of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Al-bakhilu ba'idun min Allah, ba'idun min al-jannah, ba'idun min al-nas, qareebun min al-nar." A person who is stingy is far from Allah, far from paradise, far from the hearts of people, and they are close to the punishment of the hereafter. In another hadith, the Prophet has said that a person who is stingy shall not enter paradise, because the goal of our religion is to make us among the people who have akhlaq of the Prophet, akhlaq of the Imams, and their akhlaq was to be generous. There is also a recommendation in Islam not just to avoid being stingy, but even avoid being close to somebody who is stingy. Our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam, he advised his own children and he said to them that don't even associate with somebody who is stingy, because that person will abandon you whenever you are in need. A person who is stingy with their money will also be stingy with their assistance. They may be stingy with their advice. They may want to keep their cards close to them. You can never trust that they will be there for you. With their money, with their advice, with their help, they won't risk anything for the sake of your needs. So that is the Islamic recommendation, to be moderate in the sense of avoiding stinginess. The other recommendation we have is to avoid excessive spending, or israf, or tabdhir. Israf and tabdhir refer to either spending something to a greater extent than we need, or spending something for a whim that is not needed at all. So whether it is excessive or whether it is wasteful in its entirety, that is something that would count as israf and tabdhir. The Quran teaches us, يا بني آدم خذوا زينتكم عند كل مسجد وكلوا واشربوا ولا تسرفوا إن الله لا يحب المسرفين. O descendants of Adam, adorn yourselves at the time of every prayer, or at the place of every prayer. So Islam wants us to adorn ourselves. But when do we normally get dressed up? We often get dressed up for the wrong reasons. Adorn yourselves, wear your best clothing, groom yourself in the best way for the most important meeting you have. And the most important meeting is not relatives that you have not seen for a long time, or a high-ranking government official, or a job interview, or a college interview. Your most important meeting is when you go to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So wear your zina, or your best adornment, عند كل مسجد. And then the Quran says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا. And eat and drink, but don't be extravagant. Allah does not love those who are extravagant. It is said that one of the companions of our 8th Imam, Imam Ali al-Rida alayhi salatu wassalam, he asked the Imam about an-nafaqa ala al-'iyal. What is the Imam's recommendation about spending on one's family? Now, there are some people who are stingy with their family, but then there are other people who want to have the best for their family, and they will spoil their children. They will spoil their loved ones. And the Imam said that make sure that you do spend on your family, on your children, but don't spoil them and don't be extravagant, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَنفَقُوا لَمْ يُسْرِفُوا. When they spend on those things that they want, on those things that they love, on those things that Allah has commanded us to spend on, they do so in moderation and without going overboard. And according to a hadith, israf is not just about the consequence. Sometimes we think it's only wasteful if it can't be recycled. It's only wasteful if it's not going to be used in some other good cause. It is not the consequence that we should be concerned about, but it is the relationship to our being. When I waste something, even if somebody will buy it and use it secondhand, even if somebody will pick it up and recycle it, then I have spoiled my own soul, and I have destroyed the humility and the sense of gratitude that exists within myself. Don't look at it in terms of the consequence, look at it in terms of the effect on your soul. There's a very beautiful hadith in which our 6th Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, says, إِنَّ السَّرَفَ أَمْرٌ يُبْغِضُهُ اللَّهُ حَتَّى طَرْحُكَ لِلنَّوَىٰ. Wasting is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes, even if you throw away a seed that can be used in a constructive manner. If it can be planted, if it can be composted, then don't even eat a seed and throw the seed, don't eat a date and throw the pit in the trash, because it's something that can be constructively used and you have thrown it away. These are things that we don't even think about. Most of us don't think twice about leaving food in our plate. And even those of us who finish our food, we don't think about the pit. We don't think about the seeds and whether they can be constructively used. The Imam says that وَحَتَّى صَبُّكَ فَضْلَ شَرَابِكَ. Even if you throw away the extra water in your glass, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like it. Drink it, or save it if you can drink it later, or if you are not able to drink it, then don't throw it in the trash where it will be wasted, but put it, maybe water a plant or use it somewhere constructive. Don't be wasteful. Now these are small things, and it's not that it's going to solve the problem of climate change or the global problem that exists within the world, but it makes me a different person. if I don't waste a single grain of rice, one grain, if I don't throw away a single seed or a single pit without first asking myself, can this be used in a better manner? Sometimes we think that I have bigger things to worry about, but we don't have bigger things to worry about. If we have trained ourselves so it becomes habit not to be wasteful, then when it comes to the more important questions, we will also be grateful to Allah and we will also be humble. But if I ignore the small things, then when the time comes, I will also be careless or I will be negligent about the larger issues. There is a hadith from our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in which he is reported to have said that if you are eating something and you drop your morsel on the ground, then pick it up, and if it is dirty, then clean it. You can cut off a portion, remove a portion, wash it, whatever you need to do, but eat it, and don't waste it. That is also something that is not because we're hungry and we don't have enough to eat, but because we are grateful for the rizq that Allah has given us. And the Prophet says, وَلَا يَدَعْهَا لِلشَّيْطَانِ, because if you don't do that, then it is shaitan that will consume that, meaning it will be a source of sustenance and strength for shaitan, and he will use that strength to tempt you. The Prophet is telling us that when we are wasteful, we are only strengthening shaitan in his attack against our recognition of Allah and our humility. According to a hadith of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, there are three measures of sadaf, or wastefulness. And these three measures, you can say they are the baseline. They are something that we can be conscious of to develop a habit of not being wasteful. One is ibtidhaluka thawba sawnik. If you have good clothing that is meant to be worn on special occasions, and just out of carelessness or out of laziness, you use those good clothes casually, so that they get stained, they get wrinkled, and they wear out faster than they otherwise would. The Imam says that is a sign of a person who is not a good caretaker and a good steward of the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. Sometimes people think that, well, when it wears out, I can afford to replace it. And that is not the question. The question is, did you use it carefully and did you preserve it reasonably? So one sign of a wasteful person, according to our sixth Imam, is ibtidaluka thawba sawnik. Clothing that should be for special occasions. Don't wear it as pajamas. Don't wear it when you are doing a project around the house. وَإِلْقَاؤُكَ النَّوَى يَمِينًا وَشِمَالًا. And when you are eating, if you throw the seeds to the right and to the left without thinking about where they can be utilized, then that is another sign that you are wasteful. Once again, this is to say go beyond your food. That's taken for granted. If I am the kind of person who half eats my plate and I don't think twice about throwing away the leftovers, then that is unacceptable in Islam. And if I eat all my food, but I am careless about the leftovers, then that is also something that I should avoid. And then the Imam says, وَإِحْرَاقُكْ فَضْلَ الْمَاءِ. If you throw away your extra water carelessly, and we can add to that how many of us, we buy a water bottle, drink half of it, throw it away, the plastic is wasted, the water is wasted, and we become consumers and careless. That is a sign, according to our Imam, not the plastic, but the wastefulness and the wasting of water of somebody who is musrif. It is a high standard, but there is a reason for it. If a person is wasteful, according to the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, first of all, haramahullah. That person will be deprived of God's mercy. And second, afqarahullah. That person will become poor. They will feel poor and they will become poor because the spirit of wastefulness is something that strengthens the weakest and the most damaging attributes within our soul. So we will become worse off than we are, and we will also feel worse off than we were in the past. And Another harm is that when we are wasteful, our prayers are not worthy of being answered. We have a hadith from the Prophet and from the Imams that a person who is a musrif, their du'as and their prayers are not answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah to protect us from israf and from the stinginess that many people they fall into when they live a materialistic life. And inshallah, in the second khutbah, we will talk briefly about iqtisad or moderation in our consumption. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. Sallu ala Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء وعلى الحسن والحسين وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين صلوات. I seek forgiveness from Allah for myself and all mu'mineen and mu'minat, and I praise Allah for His bounties. Just a few ahadith that speak of moderation in spending. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam has said, من أشرف الشرف الكف عن التبذير والسرف. One of the greatest signs of nobility is to avoid being extravagant. Sometimes we think that we want to impress people, we want to have a great wedding, so we're going to be wasteful. We want to have a great graduation party, so we're going to be wasteful. We want to show our honor through wastefulness. We should be generous. We should invite others to share in our happiness, but without being wasteful. That doesn't bring honor. Honor is by avoiding. Sharaf comes from avoiding saraf, and saraf is wastefulness. Another very beautiful hadith from our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the advice the Prophet used to give for his companions. La tabnu ma la taskunun. Don't build something that you are not going to live in. وَلَا تَجْمَعُوا مَا لَا تَأْكُلُونَ. And don't collect something that you are not going to use and spend. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. And be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you will return to Allah, and you shouldn't think that this world is your eternal abode. And finally, a hadith from our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. He says that when you want to earn a livelihood, when you want to save, then do so فوق كسب المضيع. There are some people who are very careless. They don't wake up on time, they don't set a schedule, they don't set a budget, they just kind of live life by the impulse and in the moment. That is a person who is مضيع. Do more than the person who is مضيع, but then do less than طلب الحريص المطمئن إلى الدنيا الراضي بالدنيا. There are some people whose entire concern is about this world. They wake up thinking how they can make more money. They go to bed thinking how they can save money. So our sixth Imam says, don't be مضيع, but don't be haris. Find a balance where you are responsible, but you have a place for your worldly concerns and it doesn't take over your life. That is the balance that we should seek in earning and in spending the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. I pray to Allah that He grant all of us the ability to make use of the resources He has given us without living a material life, and that He allow us to live with honor and dignity, to pay off our debts, to meet our needs, and to be of assistance to our families, to our relatives, to our community, and to humanity. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. صلاة الجمعة. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أشهد أن عليا ولي الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي